Zach's phone continues to ping around the area of his home through 7:34 p.m. The phone shows a couple of missed calls at this time, and Zach states that he fell asleep after being tired from having his kids all weekend and working at the tree farm. At 7:30 p.m., Michael Campbell and his girlfriend Erica have dinner delivered to their house. Although police did not investigate Michael, despite him interfering in their investigation and trespassing on Zach's property, he provided this as an alibi in the trial because the defense filed a motion requesting to point him as another potential culprit in Rosalio's disappearance. Their motion was ultimately denied, which we will discuss in a later episode, and they were not allowed to bring in all the information gathered. At 7:40 p.m., Rosalio drops off his son with his ex, Christy. Her house is approximately 3 minutes from Rosalio's apartment. He then makes his way over to Kayla's house to drop off his daughter. At 8:05 p.m., Rosalio texts Nereda, "How far do you live from me?" She sends him back a screenshot of Apple Maps showing an arrival of 19 minutes from her location to an address in Milwaukee. Rosalio tells her that she has the wrong address. His address is the same one, however in Kenosha, not Milwaukee. He then gives her his address again, and she then texts him a screenshot of Apple Maps with the correct address and a drive time of 37 minutes. Rosalio also texts Nereda asking if she wants him to pick up anything to drink. He tells her what he has at his place, and she replies back that beer is okay, but then changes to water, saying she doesn't want to get a DUI. At 8:20 p.m., Rosalio arrives at Kayla's house to drop off his daughter. Kayla testifies he stays for a couple minutes and she remembers him wearing athletic pants, glasses, and a hat. Rosalio texts Nereda, letting her know that his GPS shows he should be home at 9:01 p.m. Nereda tells him that she will start leaving her house at 8:24 p.m. If she in fact meant that she was leaving within minutes, that should put her to Rosalio's apartment around the same time that he is due to arrive. The following is Nereda's testimony regarding the plan to meet up.
My plan was just to sit outside, maybe in the car, and just get to know each other.
So his plan was for you to come in, but your plan was for him to come out.
Correct.
So what plan did you make that you solidified of what would happen when you arrived there at 9 p.m.?
What plan did I make? I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
You just testified, previously you testified that the plan was he was going to come out and you guys were going to go for a ride together. Just now you testified that he wanted the plan according to him was that you were going to come inside.
I'm thinking maybe he wanted me to come in. I don't know what was he thinking, but I can tell you that my plan was for him to come out. I don't know if he was...
Okay, so that was just your plan. That
Right.
wasn't something that you guys discussed and agreed
No,
on.
not at all.
Okay, so you didn't discuss that when you had the phone call with him earlier then?
We just planned to just meet up with each other. That was the plan.
At 9 p.m.?
Yes.
At 8:27 p.m., Rosalio texts Sadie.
Just dropped off my daughter. Going over to Mike's for a little bit.
Okay, cool. Maybe text me or ring me when you leave there or something.
Okay.
At 8:44 p.m., presumably on his way home, Rosalio has a short phone call with another girl he was talking to, Kim. According to Kim's testimony, he told her he had just taken a friend shopping and he needed to drop off his kids to go to Maynard's, but he would call later. At 8:45 p.m. and 8:47 p.m., Zach receives 2 more unanswered phone calls. We know that Rosalio returned home around 9 p.m. In photos of Rosalio's kitchen, there was a bag of limes and a cutting board, and there were cut-up limes and 2 Corona bottle caps. There was also an empty Corona bottle in the trash. There was also a partially full Corona bottle in the living room with a lime in it. Now, do we think Rosalio had started drinking prior to driving his kids home? It would make much more sense that he would have done that when he arrived home. It looks like he had enough time to cut up some limes and start drinking in preparation for his date with Nereda, which, if you remember, they had discussed what they wanted to drink. According to a witness testimony from one of Rosalio's neighbor, Lene Douglas, sometime around 9 p.m. she claims that she heard a scream in the hallway outside of Rosalio's apartment.
When she heard at approximately 9 p.m. a scream in the hallway by 1B. She described the scream as high, as if someone was in pain and surprised.
Although, it should be mentioned that Lene's original statement was vastly different. Originally, she stated she heard arguing inside Rosalio's apartment the next day on May 18th around 1 o'clock p.m. After speaking with the prosecutor, she changed her statement and made herself unavailable to questioning by the defense. The defense attempted to get a warrant for her appearance, but the judge denied it, so she did not show up to testify in trial. We don't know exactly what time Lene was now referencing, but we do know that Rosalio and Nereda were supposed to be meeting at that time, based on when she said she was starting her drive. However, Nereda doesn't text about her impending arrival until she is nearly 45 minutes late at 9:37 p.m.
5 minutes away.
At 9:43 p.m.
I'm here.
At 9:44 p.m.
Where do I park?
At 9:52 p.m.
Are you okay?
In the following testimony, one of Rosalio's neighbors testified to hearing something around this time.
Of 2020, where they asked you, did you hear or see anything on the days preceding that caused you some sort of concern from the downstairs apartment?
Yes.
And what, if anything, do you recall telling law enforcement about your observations that they were asking about?
Just hearing loud banging, like against the wall.
And was this specifically did you have a specific night that you had heard this?
It was a Sunday night.
So that would be May 17th?
Yes.
And when you heard this, approximately what time was it, if you recall?
Between 10 and 11.
So just a couple of follow-up questions. This banging or the sound that you heard, you said in between 10 and 11. Do you remember if it was closer to 11? Do you have a more specific time?
I would say closer to 10, like a little after 10.
At 10:05 p.m., Nereda, who is still waiting in her car, texts Rosalio again.
I'm worried about you. Are you okay?
All of these text messages would remain unread. She claims that as she waited for his response, she moved her car 4 different times to different parking spots. At 10:10 p.m., Rosalio's phone shows its last activity, which is when the phone orientation changes from portrait to landscape, which ends at 10:44 p.m. Police will state that they believe this is when the phone battery ran out and turned off. Finally, at 10:18 p.m., Nereda texts Rosalio that she left after waiting in her car for 35 minutes. She did not try to knock on his door. Nereda's story is a little puzzling. She does not give an explanation as to why she showed up at Rosalio's apartment almost 45 minutes late, with no prior call or texting him saying she was running late. There were no calls or texts from Rosalio to her asking where she was. So, what if Nereda didn't actually arrive late? How do we know she didn't get there at 9 p.m. when she was supposed to, and then text him after the fact to cover her tracks? That would almost make the most sense, given that there's no correspondence between the two about her being late. It's also weird that her response to possibly getting blown off by a date right in front of his home is, "Are you okay?" If she had arrived exactly when she was supposed to at 9 p.m., she would have been there around the same time that the scream was allegedly heard and the murder allegedly took place. We have heard many instances where women are used as decoys on apps like Facebook Dating to lure a man into a situation where he can be robbed by armed men that show up instead. Although this was their first time meeting, Nereda had declined his offer to meet at her place or somewhere public. She instead asked him for his address and told him she would go there. Could this have been a planned attack and robbery by Nereda and people she knew? One possible scenario is that she did enter Rosalio's apartment that night and perhaps while he was in the bathroom, let the attackers in through the patio door. Then, once the attack was over, she texted him every few minutes to start the alibi. The interesting thing is that she told him she wanted water to drink, and there was an open water bottle found in the living room. However, in order to build a timeline for this night, it's important to remember the time Nereda should have arrived, the time she might have arrived, and also the time she texted she left. The prosecutors claimed that the murder happened shortly after 10 p.m., so she would have been right outside the whole time. Their theory was built on when Rosalio's phone orientation changed, the unread text, and when a neighbor reported hearing a noise. But at 11:19 p.m., Zach's phone resumes activity when he texts his girlfriend Christine saying, "Sorry, I fell asleep." So if Zach had committed the murder as suggested and moved the phone by 10:10 p.m., he had only 1 hour and 9 minutes to leave the crime scene and return home by 11:19 where his phone pings. Even if he had managed to somehow remove the body undetected, the drive time from Rosalio's apartment to Zach's home is a little over an hour. However, there was construction at the time, and another thing to note is that there are anywhere between 33 and 45 traffic cameras on the major highways. Zach was not seen on any of them. So if Zach were to have committed the crime like they said, he would have needed to take a different route to avoid these cameras. The fastest route avoiding these highway cameras is an hour and 24 minutes, which would have put Zach home later than 11:19. Except police officers reviewed camera footage from many gas stations, schools, home surveillance cameras along the most obvious routes, even on the back roads, and still did not see Zach or his van on a single one. Plus, we know from Nereda's testimony, people were coming and going from the apartment buildings, and visibility was clear enough that she could describe who she saw. And she herself would have been in the parking lot when the body was removed. So how does Zach carry out a body and drive an hour plus home totally undetected?
The timeline doesn't work at all. The state presumed that the murder was committed at about 10 p.m. on May the 17th. My brother had to be home by 11:19 that same night. The time to travel from Kenosha to my brother's house using the freeway at the time was an hour and like 9 minutes. How is it possible for him to have wrapped this up in about 10 minutes and commit this crime and make it all the way back to Mequon without ever being seen on any traffic camera? You have an unrealistic amount of time for him to have committed this crime, clean up, wrap up a corpse. You know how much time it takes to wrap up carpeting, to wrap it all up, to contain dripping blood and all this? I was a contractor for 10 years, just wrapping up carpeting. Trying to maintain a mess of drywall is going to take you more time, especially with an unwieldy 270 to 300 pound weight. It's not physically possible. My brother had a bad back, has a bad back. It still aggravates him. If he were to lift a 270 to 300 pound weight, shoulder it and walk it outside and put it in the back of his van, he would have been laid up in bed, bedbound for days, without question. There's no question he would have aggravated his injury.
Could Zach have gone back and removed the body later? Evidence proves this is not feasible. His phone records on the following day do not put him in that area, and instead put him in the area of where he was working at Susan's house and his home. Phone records show that Zach searched for store hours of several home improvement stores early the next morning. Many people thought this was strange behavior. However, Zach had a day of work ahead of him, and with COVID affecting many business hours, it would make sense for him to want to research this before heading out.
I don't really know what this is, but I didn't do it. I'm innocent, Judge. Not guilty. I'm innocent.